He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has obstructed the administration of justice. He has obstructed the laws of naturalization of foreigners. He has made judges dependent on his will alone. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to civil power. He has sent swarms of officers to harass our people. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has declared himself invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He is using mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, totally unworthy of the head of a civilized nation. He has deprived us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. He has transported us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. He has excited domestic insurrections. On July 4th, 1776, fed up with King George, our forefathers declared the words that I just read. They said, "We will no longer accept a government that does not represent us." They raised Betsy Ross's new flag, a flag of courage, a flag of dignity, a flag of a belief that a nation could be built on liberty and justice for all. They raised a flag of dissent against what was and hope for what could be. When our country's founders said, "I dissent" from the British, history teaches us that they felt a deep connection to the Israelites and to our descent from Pharaoh and our exodus from Egypt. Benjamin Franklin's 1776 blueprint for the Great Seal of the United States depicted Moses lifting his hands at the water and read, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." This evening, I stand before you prepared to deliver a sermon I did not want to have to give, but it is necessary. On this 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, I need to speak about the dangerous trajectory of the state of our democracy and our role in voicing dissent. I commend President Trump's attempt to bring home the hostages, demilitarize Hamas, and end this war. This work is vital, and I cannot give this talk without acknowledging these critical moves. But our job as Jewish Americans is not only to care about what happens to our people in Israel. Here in this country and beyond, many lives have been destroyed and uprooted by this very same president. And for those of us who haven't been injured yet, our freedoms, our dignities, and our rights are in jeopardy. And as your rabbi, I must speak out. I must voice my dissent. In his essay entitled Dissent, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel writes, "Dissent is indigenous to Judaism. The greatness of the prophets was in their ability to voice dissent and disagreement, not only with the beliefs of their pagan neighbors, but also with the cherished values and the habits of their very own people. It is our Jewish responsibility to live up to our prophetic inheritance and to hold all of our leaders accountable." The prophets didn't just challenge foreign kings. They challenged their own people. Isaiah stood at the temple and said, as we will read tomorrow in the Haftarah, "Your fasts are meaningless if they do not break the chains of injustice." Isaiah wasn't polite. He wasn't comforting, but he was correct. The indigenous ability to voice dissent runs through our Jewish veins. In Israel, over these past few years, there has been what I would call a prophetic movement of dissent. The Israeli Declaration of Independence reads, "The state of Israel will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all of its inhabitants. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace, as envisaged by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all of its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture." 2 years ago, when Prime Minister Netanyahu's government was working to pass the judicial reform bill, Israelis throughout the country knew that this bill would change and would undermine Israel's democracy. They held onto these words, this vision that was written in their Declaration of Independence, and they engaged in profound patriotic dissent. The energy of that dissent throughout Israel that summer was truly electrifying. It was blistering hot on Motzei Shabbat in Tel Aviv. The sweat poured from my brow the minute I stepped out onto the street. And I'm really not exaggerating. It was so hot. Anybody who has spent time in Tel Aviv in July knows exactly what I'm talking about. As we approached our destination, the streets filled with people. Most of them were carrying big Israeli flags. This was the largest gathering of Jews I had ever been a part of. Hundreds of thousands, we were told. There was chanting, there was drumming, there were songs, there were speeches expressing rage toward the government and dissenting against this judicial reform bill. As the demonstration came to a close, the most miraculous thing happened. A hush came over the crowd. Nobody, not one person, was standing by the microphone. There was no leader, but everyone there seemed to know exactly what to do. It felt organic and communal and deeply beautiful. Hundreds of thousands of people in the center of Tel Aviv closed their eyes, and in all of our heartbreak, our voices melted together and we gently sang Hatikva. So protests like this went on every single week throughout 2023, sometimes multiple times a week, with Israelis of all ages and backgrounds showing up, even in the debilitating heat of summer and in the chilling rain of the winter. I attended similar protests during the summer of 2024, with incredible numbers of Israelis coming forth then too, protesting the war and Netanyahu and Ben-Gvir and Smotrich's authoritarian messianic government, and begging in the streets of Tel Aviv for a hostage deal. People had a variety of signs that I saw. Pictures of hostages, many pictures of hostages. Pictures of Palestinian children who had been killed in the war. Signs that said, "Bring them home now." Signs that said, "Enough! End the war." Banners quoting Rambam, "There is no greater mitzvah than redeeming captives." No matter what message these people were displaying, most of the Israelis were also carrying an Israeli flag. Hundreds of thousands of dissenting Israeli voices, including many who served in high-ranking positions in the Israeli army. These were Israeli citizens saying, "We need our hostages back now. We do not believe this war has the capacity to bring the safety that we yearn for. Too many people are dying, and this continued war will only bring more death and more pain. Enough." The prophetic voice in Judaism was never about being agreeable. Rather, it was always about being accountable. And that legacy runs through the protesters in Tel Aviv and directly through the courts here in America, too. It runs through the dissenting opinions of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and today through Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Justice Ginsburg wrote 200 dissenting opinions in her time serving on the Supreme Court. And now Justice Jackson is burning the midnight oil, writing dissents against the decisions of the Roberts Court. Dissenters are not just crying out aimlessly in the wilderness. As Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, dissents speak to a future age. It's not simply to say, my colleagues are wrong and I would do it this way. But the greatest dissents do become court opinions. And gradually, over time, their views become the dominant view. So that's the dissenters' hope, that they are writing for today, that they are not writing for today, but that they are writing for tomorrow. So I imagine that every one of us in this room recognizes the beginning of the American Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. You could probably say it with me, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what I quoted at the beginning of this sermon is far less familiar. It is the list of grievances that our founders felt required to spell out as they took the momentous decision to reject their sovereign leader, a leader who they said had violated the very rights governments exist to protect. This was their declaration of dissent. I dare say it is time for our declaration of loyal, patriotic dissent. Today, in the United States of America, we have a leader who has pressured the Justice Department to indict his political enemies, refused to follow the law by ignoring mandated spending programs, stacked the court with partisan allies, and accelerated gerrymandering, denied facts, spun lies, and demonized journalists with the aim of silencing free speech, exonerated violent insurrectionists, sent masked agents to round up brown immigrants on the street and deported immigrants without due process, sent the National Guard to cities against the express will of state governments and citizens in violation of the law, promoted friends and allies to positions of power that they are unfit to hold, threatened and deprived people of their own basic human rights, including the right to health care, and trampled on human dignity and, for many, many people, particularly transgender people. These are not just political actions that we agree or disagree with. They are foundational threats to the rule of law and to the foundation of our republic on the order of those cited in the Declaration itself. The stars and stripes of the flag that was sewn by Betsy Ross in 1776 was never meant to be owned by one party or any one president. It belongs to all of us. And like our Israeli siblings, we should carry it proudly, and we should protest the actions of our current government. Carrying the flag to a protest is not an act of disrespect. It's an act of reverence. It says, I still believe, no matter what has happened, I still believe in what this country can be. If I can't fly the American flag or the Israeli flag with the politics that I have, with the patriotic dissent that I voice as a Jew, as an American, as a Zionist, and as a rabbi, then we give in to making nationalism only for people who are on the extremes. And we simply cannot afford to do that. While the prophets of Israel were ignored and ridiculed, they continued to make their dissents heard time and time again. And look at what happened. Their testaments live on for us today. They continue to inspire us on every Shabbat and on every holiday as we read the Haftarot. The Haftarah portion that we will read tomorrow morning and the book of Jonah, which we will read in the afternoon, are deeply tied to this very moment. Jonah is told by God to go out and speak against the violence and moral decay in Nineveh. And what does he do? He runs away. He hides. He does not want to get involved. Don't pick me. And then Jonah wakes up. Only after praying to God from the depths is Jonah truly able to find his voice and find his calling in that moment. He finally speaks out with dissent directly to the people. And guess what? We know the story. The people, they actually listen. They repent and they change. Jonah's story reminds us that our voices might matter more than we actually think, that our silence is not neutral, and that Yom Kippur demands a lot from us, not just personal reflection, but moral courage. So one of the ways that I articulate moral courage is through Jewish ritual language. And this year, this includes a special al-chet. Al-chet for the pain and the suffering, whether intentional or unintentional, that the American government has caused during this year. We may not have voted for our current leaders, but they are indeed our leaders. And according to Jewish construct of Yom Kippur and confessionals, we bear collective responsibility. As a Zionist who has also attached myself to the dream of Israel, to all that Israel can be as it is outlined in that Declaration of Independence, I add an al-chet for the pain and suffering caused by the Israeli government, whether intentionally or unintentionally. If I am really going to do the work of this Yom Kippur, I need to take all of this, every bit of it seriously, and not be afraid to articulate the pieces that make me deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. But I want to invite us to remember something that's really important. Collective responsibility isn't centered on the past. It lives and it breathes in the future. I know that many of us feel helpless right now, like our voices of dissent might not make any difference. And in truth, they may not. But throughout history, there have been terrible, terrible leaders who have hurt countless people. And those who have remained quiet during those periods of time have looked back and wondered what else they could have done. And so on this day of Tshuva, on this Yom Kippur, when we are focused on the very hard personal work of taking account of our own lives, I beg us to be brave enough to think about our nation and to ask, how can I use my voice for patriotic dissent in a way that will shift this reality and help those that are feeling most vulnerable in this very moment? What can I do this year to avoid saying an al-chet for not doing enough when we reach this holy day next year in 5787? We can show meaningful, nonviolent dissent through thoughtful writing, through organizing prayer rituals at places like the ICE detention center or other facilities, showing up at rallies downtown or even on a street corner in this very neighborhood. We must We must create partnerships with others who are doing good work locally. That will help us not to feel so alone. And we must support those who are working tirelessly in our state offices to hold up our democracy right here in Colorado, and those who are working to fight tyranny on a national level. And we must be brave enough to build communities that can sustain healthy and meaningful debate. We built an entire rabbinic canon that is based in dissent. Page after page after page after page of the Talmud captures argument after argument, not just publishing the winning idea, but all of the other ideas are published as well. Today, our democracy thrives on creating spaces for multiple perspectives, and we can't allow the extremists within our country to steal that from us. We must remain brave enough to approach others and to solicit respectful disagreement and dialogue, because that is actually fundamental to what it means to be part of a free society. So I recognize that this is all a lot, and that many of us are feeling really scared right now. Of course we are. Prior to giving this talk today, I mentioned to Amy, I wonder if I'll decide to put it on Facebook after, or if I'll be in some danger. That is scary, that I feel that sharing these words could put a rabbi in danger. But here's the thing. Fear is a political tool. It is a weapon that is leveraged to keep us from speaking. It is leveraged to make us stop breathing. It is leveraged to make sure that we do not dissent. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov taught us that famous line, Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar ma'od, ve'ikar lo lefached klal. The world is a narrow, narrow bridge. And the important thing, my friends, the really important thing is not to be afraid. Of course, Rabbi Nachman understood that fear existed. I don't believe he was trying to tell us not to feel our true feelings, but he was telling us not to allow those feelings to paralyze us. And I'm telling us that right now. We cannot be paralyzed. So all of the news outlets, they've all declared that this year, in marking the 250th anniversary, there are going to be parties, and there are going to be pageants, there are probably going to be parades, and there's very, very likely going to be a lot of money spent on fireworks. Yet on this Yom Kippur, in this 250th year, I assert that the most Jewish and the most patriotic way to celebrate is to hold an American flag and to say, this flag symbolizes the ideals of this nation. Ideals that are being abused and desecrated every single day. Today, I dissent and I recommit myself to upholding those ideals. I admit that I have never hung an American flag in my home. But we're told that rabbis sometimes give the sermons that we most need to hear. And so earlier this week, I ordered an American flag, and I also ordered an Israeli flag. Both will hang in our home office as a reminder that our holy work is not done. We Jews have been resisting tyrants since Pharaoh, and we will not stop today, or tomorrow, or the next day. Lo alecha hamlachag ligmor, velo ata ben chorin lihibatal mimena. As I said on Rosh Hashanah, quoting Pirkei Avot, it's not up to us to complete the entirety of the job, but neither can we desist from doing our part. Let's take out our flags and get to work. Shana Tova. Gamar Tov.